supervisor, my academic committee members, and also the project partners. As academicians and also practitioners, I would like to throw a question to you. Assuming that you are in your home in the peak period of winter, and it's extremely cold, and the electricity power in your home and the heating system really goes off in your home, how would you feel, including your kids and also including the work that you are doing? This tells us that energy plays a very significant role in the daily activities of human, and that it has led to a global transition to renewable energy potential to address energy insecurity, expand community capabilities, and also to combat climate change. Yet, many remote indigenous communities continue to face energy insecurity. For example, in northern Canada, off-grid communities continue to depend on diesel imported fuel, which places these communities in energy vulnerable situations, such as high energy prices. In the end-of-line grid communities, these communities are connected to the northern grid, but they continue to experience energy insecurity. Why? Because the energy infrastructure in these communities continue to age, and that it works in close or low capacity. That results in frequent power outages. Due to this enduring energy insecurity affecting northern communities, there has been a prioritization of localized renewable energy development to address this energy insecurity. Yet, there exists a limited assessment of renewable energy potential due to lack of data to support the technical assessment, also the feasibility studies of the renewable energy potential within these communities. External interest to advance this renewable energy development in these communities continue to face community resistance. Why? Because it's based on the top-down approach that tends to limit community resistance. Community energy planning has been described as a tool to address community energy needs and wants. But in most northern communities, community energy planning is largely absent. But in some communities, it's now slowly it's now gaining traction, and that it forced to incorporate community values and context. Community values and context have been described as a social lens that influences community interest and also the acceptability of such projects in these communities. The overall purpose of my research is to identify key renewable energy resources, potential and opportunities for a local renewable energy development in northern communities informed by community values and context. The specific objective of my research is to one, identify and assess theoretical recoverable biomass resource within a non-harvestable area of a commercial forest zone near Pelican. With a theoretical recoverable biomass, I'm referring to harvestable forest trees within non-harvestable area in consideration of land use areas and designated areas. Specific objectives to look at: identify and assess theoretical recoverable biomass resources within a harvestable area of a commercial forest zone operated by a local timber supply company owned by the Pelican First Nation called Natives. With a theoretical recoverable biomass, I'm referring to harvestable trees within a commercial forest zone. The objective 3 looked at exploring and also integrating community values and constraints to the biomass use near Pelican Narrows. Objective 4 looked at generating a potential recoverable biomass resources to support the community bioenergy for the bioenergy development at Pelican Narrows. Here, I'm referring to the consideration of local designated areas and also the community concerned areas to identify the potential recoverable biomass area. Pelican Narrows is a member community of the Pelican First Nation, and it's located 388 northeast of Prince Albert. My community, or my study community, is connected to the northern grid, but it continues to face energy insecurity. For instance, the transmission line that travels from the distribution station to my community is not grounded, and that it is vulnerable to threats such as falling trees. The power station that also transmits electricity power to my community is also vulnerable to forest fire. In my community, there's no natural gas distribution network, and that most households depend on electricity in heating their homes, and that it results to high energy consumption that starts from August to December to the period of to February, and that most households spend their monthly income in paying their electricity bill. Some household who can also afford using the electricity depend on wood stove for heating their homes, which places some households in health vulnerable situations. Due to this energy insecurity affecting Pelican Narrows, as a member committee of the Interbank PGC, there has been an expression of renewable energy option to address one, reduce the power cost and also develop its own source restriction. And they foresee that having the biomass resources will increase community energy resilience, which will create opportunities for the local economy. Biomass resources have been identified as the renewable energy potential due to the operationalization of the local timber supply company that operates within the forest zone, and also giving the Boreal forest which it's around my study community. Due to the energy insecurity affecting my member community, the estimated energy requirement and also demand for my study community is to 3.5 megawatts. Should this energy demand and requirement be met, there's a need for us to understand the technical assessment, and also there's a need to understand the community values and constraints to identify biomass resources in order to influence the community acceptability and also the interest in the biomass resources. The research method of my research is in two phases. Phase one is a geospatial design to support the technical assessment of biomass resources. Phase two is a community engagement, participatory mapping and optimization to influence or to evaluate the community acceptability and also interest in the community bioenergy, and also to know the community preference, and also in order to understand the extent to which these biomass resources could be assessed in order to reduce transportation costs. With the technical assessment, it began by looking at hypothetical biomass resources based on forest trees that are matured, old and very old, and also forest trees that are Japan, forest land classification that are Japan and floor. So within these hypothetical biomass resources are the identification of theoretical biomass resources within a non-harvestable area in consideration of provincial and also protected land use areas. So the focus was also looked at available biomass resources within these protected areas. On the other side was identifying the theoretical recoverable biomass resources within a harvestable area being operated by the local timber supply company, within their capital zone. So the theoretical biomass resources is being found within the non-harvestable area, and also the technical recoverable biomass being found within the harvestable area. The phase two started with a community engagement where committee members were introduced to the purpose of the project. That led to the community participatory mapping where committee members, there's a need for the committee members to indicate their place specific when it comes to places where they go for their hunting, places where they go for their traditional food, in order to evaluate places that are permissible for the biomass resources. That led to identifying a biomass resource, that's a potential recoverable biomass resource in consideration of protected areas and also community consent areas. Moving further was the estimation of forest residue volume. Here, my study adapted a forest estimation volume from a study carried by Professor et al. In 2020. Why? Because having conversation with the local timber supply company that operate closer to my study community, they don't have data when it comes to the estimation of forest residue, and that I saw that this could be used as a proxy in order to estimate the forest residue, within the area that I'm working on, based on the method of harvesting, or also the tree species that are common in my study area. So this was being carried from Cold Lake First Nation that also looked at also having a community bioenergy. So moving to that was optimization, where I came out with to what distance can we harvest the forest resources through the community, and also to what distance can one travel to harvest the resources from the road, given the optimization of biomass resources. The technical assessment. So for the technical assessment, it began by using geospatial tools in ArcGIS in order to assess the resources within an adapted 50-kilometer boundary from the community. Why? Because I'm looking at local supply of resources. So anything that goes beyond 50 kilometers is not considered as local supply, but in the form of sharing the resources with other neighboring communities. So my study started looking at identifying hypothetical biomass resource, that's the upland forest. So this shows the matured, old and very old forest trees within a 50-kilometer boundary around the community. This is my study community. So what would be the volume of forest residue that will be generated within this 50-kilometer boundary in consideration of protected areas and also community concerned areas? And is it going to meet the required energy demand and requirement? So first was the identifying theoretical biomass resources. Here, my focus was harvestable forestry outside legal inaccessible areas. So like within this 50-kilometer buffer, they have protected buffer measures in order to protect these legal inaccessible areas. So in consideration of that was, I had an area coverage of approximately 223,000 hectares. So within these, by using the comparative data from Cold Lake, what would be the volume of forest residue that will be generated within this 50-kilometer boundary? So using the calculation that at the end of every year, we are going to generate approximately 48,236 over dry ton within this 50-kilometer boundary. My study also looked at, well, outside the 50-kilometer buffer boundary, there's a forest operation that operates closer to my community. And these communities, in one way or the other, also faces community energy insecurity. So there be a need that you have to convey these forest residue within a commercial forest zone to my community in consideration of sharing the resources with this area. What would be the volume of forest residue that could be generated within this operational area? So using the comparative data from Cold Lake, meaning that at the end of every year, the local timber supply company that operates within area is going to generate approximately 3,289 over dry ton per hectare. Moving to the phase 2 was a community engagement and also a participatory mapping process. The community engagement and also the participatory mapping process was organized in partnership with Quest Canada, Co-Mapping Solution, University of Saskatchewan, and with the assistance from the local energy coordinator. It began by looking at community engagement workshop where members of the community were introduced to the purpose of the project, for us to also know their perspective when it comes to the community bioenergy production, and also to know their relevance in identifying community concern areas. Here, data was collected, but also to have a familiarization with the community members. In participants were 33. The participants that showed up during the workshop was 33. That led to, so this was done in November 2022. In June 2023, was a community participatory mapping activity. So in working in small group and also using their local dialogues, that's the Cree language, community members were able to indicate their place specific in identifying places that are potential to harvest the biomass resources. So in that, they indicated places where they go for their hunting, places where they have their active life, places where they go for their camping, places where they have their pictograph. So in consideration of these areas are areas that are not permissible in order to harvest the forestry for a commercial, for a community bioenergy. Moving further was, they came out with their preferred buffer, that to what extent should they be not permissible to harvest these forest trees. So in participants were, the participants that showed up for the community participatory mapping were 25. I would say that this was a snapshot and it doesn't reflect the whole perspective of all community members, but those that attended the community participatory mapping activity. So so at the end of the community participatory mapping, all these layers were exported, geo-referenced and also mapped and overlaid on the identified theoretical biomass resources to identify a potential recoverable biomass resources. So my focus is forest trees outside the legal and accessible areas and also the community concerned areas. So using the comparative data from Cold Lake First Nation, what would be the volume of forest residue that would be generating like within the 50-kilometer boundary around the community, because I'm looking at local supply of biomass resources. So at the end of every year, meaning that we're going to generate approximately 38,966 over dry ton per hectare. Moving further, having identified these potential biomass resources, I came out with a scenario that's looking at preference of harvesting the forest trees from the community and also accessibility in order to know the community preference of harvesting these resources based on their interest and ownership of the community bioenergy. So it started by looking at preference and availability. To what extent is one going to travel to, or to what extent is the community prefer to harvest the biomass resources for their community bioenergy? So this was done in a concentric zone in an increasing distance from 10, 20, 30, and 40. So moving 10 kilometers using the 18 over dry ton per hectare, meaning that traveling 10 kilometers to generate this volume of forest residue. Traveling 20 kilometers to generate this volume of forest residue, and traveling 30 to generate this forest residue. So based on the energy requirement and demand, meaning that traveling 30 kilometers from the community will be able to generate the volume of forest residue to meet the community bioenergy. This, however, support the idea by Worker 2022, saying that having community are interested in having harvesting their resources from the community in terms of giving the definition of community of what energy or community of place, meaning that the closer to the community have interest in owning or having interest in the community bioenergy. I came up with a scenario that also looked at accessibility of biomass resources in an increasing distance from 0.5 kilometers to over 40. So this is assessing the biomass resources along the road, whilst considering transportation costs and also looking at the level of accessibility. So my result indicated that traveling 10 kilometers along the road will generate the volume of forest residue to meet the community energy demand and requirements. So having looked at preference from the community and accessibility along the road, what is the best optimal solution? So I came out with 4 scenarios that looking at high optimal, medium optimal, low optimal, and outside optimal. With optimization, I'm looking at more accessible and more preferable from the community. So my result indicated that traveling medium optimal, that's moderate optimal and moderate accessible, would generate the volume of forest residue to meet the community bioenergy that we are looking at 2 to 3.5 megawatts. So having looked at all these, my key takeaway is that there's a considerable potential biomass resources within 20 kilometers of Pelican to supplement the energy needs and demands of Pelican. Notwithstanding, this will help to support the local-based microgrid in order to achieve the aim that they are looking at, reducing heating costs, which will also give opportunity for local economic activity, helping the community to be community energy independence, and also helping them to achieve their local revenue generation. Based on these results and also considering recent discussion when it comes to community energy planning scholarship, there are some key observations that were made out of my results. One, there's a need to improve data availability when it comes to basic forest inventory in order to be as a starting point when looking at assessing biomass resources within the boreal forest to help communities achieve or address their energy insecurity. Notwithstanding, there's a need for us to also look at documenting community place specific in order to influence or in order to gain the interest of community acceptability and also their interest when it comes to identifying resources within the community for the community energy. My study also came out that integrating and incorporating community values and input advances community energy planning and also the acceptability of community energy options. This is where community members are able to indicate their place specific and also their values that they hold to their land in order to have or accept the project in their community. There's the notion of community energy is strengthening community preference of harvesting the resources closer to the community. These, however, support the statement by Worker 2022 by saying that community energy must be community of place, that community must own and have interest in their bioenergy production. This is some of my reference. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.